I don't really want to leave 90210
No, I'm enjoying
behind,
this.
but we do have to go to Horseshoe Bay where a lot happened. Like a lot happened because I'm assuming this is the mid-season finale of season one.
It felt like it, right?
Yeah.
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 Um,
Where do we even start?
yeah, a traumatic experience.
Do we start with the ship, the ghosts, the end cliffhanger?
Okay, let's start with the ship, just so I can get my Nancy and Nick
Yeah.
feelings out of the way.
This is a place for healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Because you know what? I cried. The breakup happened, and I was sitting there like with tears running down my face, and I watched it like 5 times.
I was laying down watching it, and then when the scene started, I was like, I got up. I was like, oh, it's happening. It's happening. My thing though is like she was surprised that it was happening, and I was like, Nancy, girl, wake up. It's been like you've been putting this boy pushing him aside. Like you had to see this coming a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she didn't though, and I was just like, "Girl, okay, so you should have known when the coins melted." And he looked at her, and she's like, "Nick,
Right.
I'm so sorry." I was like, "Girl, the breakup is it's
That was the
coming."
final straw.
Yeah,
He had had
it
enough,
was.
and like I support him fully. Like I can't defend Nancy on this one. I can't.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And they did the big dramatics angry stir he had when she was like, oh, the coins have melted. And then the next scene kicked off, and obviously things had calmed down. You're like, can they find their way back from here? But I think the line that really solidified it was when she said, I didn't know that was going to happen. And he said, I know that, and I can't blame you for that. But if you did know it was going to happen, you would have done it anyway. And I think that summed her up 100%. The greater good was always going to be more important to her than the relationship. And I just think that was the breaking point for him.
He really read
yeah.
her with that line, and I
Mhm.
think she needs to internalize that instead of like I don't think she didn't react to that, right? She didn't defend herself or anything.
No,
No.
I think Kennedy just gives this great look. Because what do
I,
you say?
yeah, because I
Yeah.
need her to internalize that because it's true. As much as you want to be like, no, I wouldn't do that. It's like, Nancy, we're among friends. We can admit that you will stop at nothing.
Yes.
And that's okay. That's who you are. Admit it. Like that's fine. But just be honest about it.
And I like that he acknowledged this when she says, I'm trying, he acknowledges that she is. It's
Yeah.
just not enough. And I was like, girl, how down bad do we have to be that we're trying? And even the trying isn't enough because it doesn't feel like it's enough. Like she is trying, but she's trying to the extent that like if he needs her, really, really needs her, she will be there emotionally. But
Yeah.
like if it has to do with what is important to him, it has to fit her agenda. And if it doesn't fit her agenda, it's like, I'm so sorry. And she thinks the sorry is enough. And the sorry is
Mhm.
at some point an apology stops being enough.
Yeah. And I think what the episode did a great deal or a great job of was it did show that she was making a great deal of effort to try and be different. Even when she was denying him or she was like being secretive, you could see that like kind of conflicted look in her faces and like, I'm being honest about it here. I will tell you eventually. And I think that's more than we've got from her so far. But what I also think is what Kennedy did such a great job with some quiet performances throughout the episode. And every time Nancy pushed back against Nick and he then pushed back against her, it was like, we're not on the same team. Or why do you keep doing this? There's just that quiet moment while he carries on talking. Nancy's in the background, like, as in what do I do here? She's still like shocked about it. She still doesn't know how to do it because you can see she is putting in the effort to try, but at this point it's just not enough anymore.
It's not. And
Did
then you have
anyone else pick up on Nancy and Ace vibes like heavily?
he seemed to be bothered when he was on her laptop and the email popped up. And we hadn't seen the email yet that it was about what Laura had put around town. And he's like, and then kind of just turns the laptop. And I was like, why are you bothered her boyfriend is emailing her?
Yeah, they share a lot of looks in this episode.
In
I
a
was
text
like,
message.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay. We move fast with ships in this show.
Right.
Did you see the text thread where he commented on her dress? Like the only thing in that text thread is that she says no to something that he asked her for, but he's been texting her. She's just not responding. And he mentions that, what is it? I think I saw you go into the house If that's you, nice dress or something.
I couldn't tell what the text said.
Oh, I paused it because two of our listeners were like, you guys need to start paying attention to what comes up on the text messages from this point forward.
I saw Kennedy tweeted about, she was like, the text in season 4, and I was like, the text in season 4. So obviously that's a thing, and then I'm going to start paying attention to that.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
This, I feel like this was definitely the most. We've obviously been watching it with like with our Nancy and AS goggles on, waiting for the moments and the crumbs. But I feel like this is, if you weren't watching it, this is the with like that. This is the episode that they kind of became that kind of, entity's the wrong word, but like they had quite a few moments where it just felt like it was just them two in the room. And even though it wasn't the kind of moments you'd want if you were shipping them as a couple, it's the most that dynamic has been explored. There's like Nancy said, quite a few interesting dynamics with the other characters, but Ace has usually been in the background, being the waiter or the chauffeur, whereas Harry was actually like a full living, breathing character in her orbit. And that's the first time I kind of felt like it about them two. So she doesn't trust him now. And she was like, why didn't you tell me? We could have worked through this. We could have found a way around it. I would have helped you find a way around it. So I'm really interested to see where that dynamic goes next. Obviously, we know where the like final chapter of that dynamic so far is, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how it gets there, because that was the first time I really saw them as like a pairing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can we talk about the juxtaposition of that next to Nick and Nancy, with Nick asking 3 times for her to open up and she refused, but her being mad at Ace for not opening up to her in the way that is very similar to what Nick wanted from her.
Yeah, when she oh my god, that scene where she's like, how can I trust anything you said? First of all, I hate that line in TV shows. I'm like, can we like move on from that? Can we just like stay in the moment and not be mad about that? But I was like, Nancy, he really has you pressed.
Mm-hmm. And he was pressed back because he was upset that she was upset. And I was like, y'all don't seem to have the relationship where this conversation would have happened.
Yeah.
But it's happening. So what's going on with with Ace and Nancy behind the scenes that we don't know about, and potentially the rest of the Drew crew don't know about?
Was this the first episode where they called Laura Ace's girlfriend? Because they kept saying your girlfriend, so. And I was like, when did that happen? I thought they were just making out in the refrigerator.
Yeah, I think it's definitely wanted to set it up so that now that they have that kind of relationship, he can doubt her. Because the moment that Nancy's dad came in and revealed all that information about Laura, I was like, is this trying to say that she could be the murderer? And then literally the next scene, Ace was like, how do you know if your girlfriend's a murderer? And it's like, okay, we are going here after all.
There was so much information. Like, we learned the truth about Ace. We learned more about Nancy's dad. Like, it was like information overload in a good way. Like, I wasn't overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed by like things were changing and happening so fast. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't, like, there was just so much. I have to say one little small Ace thing, because you guys know I love Ace. When he was hacking into the library and he was like, I'm in, and Nancy was like, how'd you do that? And he was like, I used my library card. The look she gave him was hilarious, and I watched it like 3 times.
It was so funny because like she gets so excited about like hacking things or stalking things, and she was like ready to be prepared and impressed, and he's like, library card.
Kennedy's face journey, it went from like eye roll to like amused, and I was like, that feels like a good tease of their relationship dynamic, I hope.
Yeah.
I know. The power of the library card, though. By the way, by the time this drops, y'all, it will be library card sign up month. So if you have not gotten your library card from your local library, you should do so.
I will be doing that.
Awesome. But speaking of like a lot of people, like information on people, it was really nice to get more about George's mom and having Bess be the one to remind George that like, yeah, she's not really present, but like she's dealing with a lot.
I love that one line was really powerful, and it shook George loose a little bit to kind of like, because it's hard to see like when you're in it, you're like, she's not a kid, but like you are the kid, and you're like, why is this the dynamic? Why is this happening to me? And she's like really annoyed that this is her life. And then Bess is like, she must feel so alone. And then George is like, oh crap, my mom's a person.
I know, and it was just a little moment, and but the "you okay?" I think said more than anything, because you can see George has been kind of like conflicted over that relationship with her mom before, but I think she wasn't sure whether she should show that kind of emotion. And again, it's just a little text saying "you okay?" But I think that's the furthest that relationship has been pushed. So that's one of the most interesting dynamics on the show, and it's really cool to me that they're bringing the mom, Victoria, is that her name, into the storylines more regularly. And we keep saying this is the episode where the supernatural really sinks in. This is the episode where the supernatural really sinks in. No, this was the episode where the
This
supernatural
episode was terrifying.
right?
Yes.
Right.
There was
The
a jump
hands.
scare whenever it was Nancy and Nick were in, I don't know where they were. It was
Yeah.
like a warehouse or something with the coins.
Yeah,
Mhm.
wait, I
That
literally
was there was a jump scare. I was horrified the way she ran for the coin. I was like, Nancy, don't do it. She did it, and she was like Sydney Bristow, Charlie's Angel. I was like, you go.
Yeah, I totally agree. And was it when Victoria came in? And then she was like, there are evil spirits in here. And they were all like, no, there's not. And she was like, yes, there are. And then you had that was the jump scare. She was like, ah, and you saw the spirits all like hugging the Drew crew from behind. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be a dark episode. And it really was.
The seance too.
With the dragon
So
fist.
creepy. And then when Lucy grabs her Nancy's wrist, like I jumped. And and they did so, like, you could tell they are very skillful with their limited budget when it comes to the effects, and also have time for a joke, because best screaming when nothing happened,
Right.
because things had been happening, was
Relatable.
Just because he opened the 10.
Yeah.
It was kind of terrifying too at the end when Ted is just, she's coloring and she's asking the dragon mask questions, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not Dead Lucy. She asks, I was like, how'd you go from like, should I use green or blue? And she's like, are you Dead Lucy? And I'm like, Ted.
Protect her at all costs.
Right.
Or the double ring assault, which I thought was so cute. Those teens are trying to protect her, so they get the one around her, and just in case she disturbs that one, they have another one.
They've seen Hocus Pocus.
They have. Oh, God. I love how well Nancy Drew balances the horror of it with the funniness of it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the episode, the double whammy of Nancy asking Carson if he killed Lucy Sable, and the look on his face, which is kind of incriminating, to be honest. I know he's kind of like shook, but it's also like, you're not saying anything, my guy. And then it was Nick who saw that Laura and Ace got in a car accident, which I'm like, save Ace. I know he's fine, like, because I know he's still on the show, but it was still really effective, because I was like, oh no, Ace better make it.
Yeah. And the fact that he was with Laura, who you're now starting to doubt, and I don't know whether it was just an accident or whatnot. We'll find out next week. I will say this show, we talked about how the cliffhangers are getting more and more frustrating. I have never in my life wanted to just switch on to the next episode like I did after that one.
The thing though is I have zero theories. I don't know who I think did anything.
Right.
I'm just like so in it that like I don't have my own thoughts. I'm just like so captivated that I want to know, but I have no theories.
I know, it's just like they set it up so well that we have like more than one like mini villain to deal with. Like, even if we're just talking about like the why was I going to say the humans? But I guess the humans. If we're just talking about the humans, you have Laura, who may have killed her sister for money, and then you have Carson Drew, who something's fishy about the past. And at this point, I don't even really care about Ryan Hudson. I think that part is done in terms of just, except for like, how does the whole Lucy Tiffany thing go into it?
No, I know, and I agree with you. It's funny that you said the humans. I find that's a big issue with a lot of monster movies, in that you just want to sit and watch the monsters fight because the human characters aren't that well developed. Whereas on the flip side, Nancy Drew is so good that I wouldn't care if they never did another supernatural storyline again. The characters are so good, the mysteries are so good, and to say that in just 7 episodes it's a really impressive feat to pull off. And obviously the Ryan Hudson thing is still being developed as we go along, because he wasn't even in this episode, wasn't he?
And thank God, because it would have been too much.
This is very true. But all in all, like, the dynamics and everything's really good. You do have a solid murder mystery here, and it's not even about the murder, because there are two sides to that, because there's obviously the Lucy Sable murder as well as the Tiffany Hudson one. There's also just the family history. There's also, how do the ghosts and supernatural and undead beings fit into this? And I assume that the spirit or whatever it is in the dragon mask is one of those souls that were never really alive to begin with, because that was a very weird story to bring up then just put down. So I assume that'll come back up. There's something in the mask, and it's not a friendly spirit. So yeah, it's just, I think there's been so many arcs, and it's sort of been such a multifaceted story at this point, and all of them kind of connected really well in this episode, which is why it kind of feels like it was the mid-season finale. I don't know if it was, but it set the stage nicely for whatever comes next. It definitely felt like the midpoint, but it created so much more new story in the process.
I have to say, yeah. And this was the last episode that I watched when I first watched it in 2019. And I didn't know that, because after I finished the episode, I was like, how could anybody not watch the show after this episode? I was like so gripped. And then I looked it up and I was like, this was the last episode that I watched before I gave up on the show. And I was so ashamed of myself.
But we established you just weren't in the right place for Nancy yet.
Yeah, there was just too much TV happening in 2019. I was like, I need to let something loose. And unfortunately, it was Nancy at that time. But I'm here now. And I've said that before. And oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about episode 8 next week.
I know. Because they're so smart, by the way. Like, one last point before we leave Horseshoe Bay is they use all parts of the storytelling wheelhouse. Like, I love the metaphor of, and perhaps this is on the nose, but if you like writing, it'd be the start of the sinking of the Nick and Nancy ship happens when an actual ship, a storyline about an actual ship sinking is happening, and then they have Roman coins. The fall of Rome, the coins are the ones that is the last final straw. And I was like, who writes books on this? Because these metaphors are the metaphors you'd use in a novel.
You just brought so much like intelligence to this discussion. And now I want to like Google it to see if that's a thing. That's amazing. That's amazing. I wouldn't put it past these writers.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Now I'm looking for metaphors like everywhere, because I was like, 2 breakup metaphors, and then the breakup actually happens when the coins melt.
Yeah, keep us posted on this, because I don't know if I'm well read enough to pick up on these things, but